We are failing forward from the time that we were born. But now I get to look at it and I'm building up the bricks to create success because I'm learning from those situations. I'm learning from those moments and how to reframe it and not get isolated, stuck, or be a wanderer, being able to move forward.
Have you ever heard the term failing forward? As believers in this business, we recognize that failure is not a person, it's an event. And we talk to someone who has incredible experience and wisdom and even wrote a book called Trailer Park CEO, overcoming these failure moments in her life to build something incredible. I think this episode is going to resonate with so many of us who are stuck right now in this process of feeling like we are just in a season of struggling, quietly asking ourselves, am I going to make it? If that's you, this episode is going to be a blessing. I can't wait for you to check it out. Let's dive in. Today, I'm joined by Dawn Cazedessus, author, speaker, business leader, and regional director for Keller Williams' top performing Southeast region, where she helps oversee more than 17,000 agents. But honestly, what makes Dawn's story so compelling isn't just where she is now, it's where she came from. Dawn grew up in poverty in a trailer park, helping care for her siblings while working and still maintaining straight A's in school. She became the first person in her family to graduate high school and college, later built and sold a successful coffee house franchise with 7 locations and more than 100 employees, stepped into real estate during the crash of 2008, built a mega team, and eventually became the first female CEO of a surgical hospital in Southeast Louisiana, all while raising and homeschooling her children as a divorced single mom. She's also the author of Trailer Park CEO, a book about faith, grit, leadership, and becoming a godly woman of influence through adversity and growth. And what sets Dawn apart is she's not just focused on building a bigger business, she's focused on who you have to become to actually handle it. And honestly, I think that's a message that a lot of agents need right now. So, Dawn, I am really looking forward to this conversation today. Now, I did warn Dawn, audience, you guys know that there will be one Christian dad joke before we introduce Dawn. And you guys can just fast forward, you know? All right, Dawn, let's see. Why did the Israelites wander in the desert for 40 years?
Oh god.
Because even back then, men wouldn't ask for directions.
For directions.
That's
Preach.
I feel like
Amen.
that's
That's a
pretty
great
accurate,
one.
right? You know, that's oh gosh, that's good. That's awesome. Dawn,
That's
I
a
am
great one.
thrilled that you are here. Genuinely, thanks for spending time with us. So much good stuff to dive into there, Dawn. But just do an introduction yourself, and I've got a bunch of questions, and we will jump right in.
Well, so excited to be here. And Garrett, thank you for following the Lord's voice
Mm,
in you and doing this podcast. It is just adding value to so many people's lives.
mm.
So I
Thank
just
you.
want to honor you for your obedience. This month, I make 18 years in
Mm,
the industry.
that's
It's just
awesome.
crazy
That's
when you
crazy.
look back, like you blink and it's, boom, you're at 18 years, but
Mm.
it's just been an amazing journey. And I'm just so grateful to be here and to be a part of it and doing the things that we get to do every day.
Yeah, amen. That's awesome. And your story is incredible, right? Growing up in a trailer park, to leading at such a high level today. Like, unpack that for me. What
Yeah.
shaped that grit and resilience in you? Unpack that story for us.
Yeah. Well, it makes no sense for me to be here, quite
Mm,
honestly, Garrett. Statistically speaking, when you go and look at the studies that have been done on what we call trailer park kids and people who are born and raised and grew up in trailer parks, they typically don't end up in the C-suite. They
mm,
typically don't end up into these situations because generational poverty is a real thing. And my family honestly was cursed with the generational poverty for a very long time.
mm,
And in poverty, what do you see? You see abuse, you see addictions, you
mm,
see all the things that come in those environments, which makes it really hard to get out. And I remember the day that I got my car and I was going to be the first to head off to college. And I
Mm,
remember pulling out on that gravel road, leaving that trailer, and looking in the rearview mirror at what was behind me and saying, "It is time to leave this
mm,
behind." Like if I'm going to break that generational curse on our family, I've got to leave it behind.
mm,
And while, as you can imagine, there's some excitement behind it, going off to discover new things. As I was looking through the windshield, which was the future, it was scary,
mm,
because it wasn't like I had all the right tools and resources and quite honestly, economics, finances, all of those things to be able to do it. I had to have faith. Now,
mm,
I didn't even understand what that word meant at that season of my life, but I knew that I had to trust in something bigger than me
mm,
to be able to drive that car and leave that poverty behind. So
mm,
that was a pivotal moment in my life, and that has been my journey this whole life. Like I look and I say, like, I've gotten here because I refuse to keep looking in the rearview mirror, and
mm,
I keep looking in the windshield of what God promises to his children
mm,
in goodness and faithfulness and
mm.
abundance.
That's awesome. So okay, so in that moment as you're leaving, you made mention you're not even a believer at that point. Is
No,
that yeah,
no,
wow. So
no.
with like
Now I knew who God was.
okay.
I knew he was,
Yeah.
and I was that person that went to church because it was an escape.
Mm,
Church was a safe place away from that home. It
mm,
provided community, but I didn't understand it.
mm,
And actually the church that I went to didn't even talk about personal relationships with Christ. It
mm,
was more of just ritualistic. It was like
mm,
attendance, right? And checking boxes. And so I knew who God was and I was believing in God, but I didn't really know Jesus.
mm. Man, that's amazing. So you're coming out of so what's amazing, Don? So my dad spent a lot of his childhood in a trailer park, right? Growing
Mm.
up in the trailer, which is him and his mom, and him and his dad, or his mom and dad had issues, and it blows my mind because I think about it of our natural tendency tends to be that when I meet somebody, I don't know, I just assume we've had this same experience, right? Like we're in the same place today. Obviously I wasn't there as you were growing up, wasn't there as my dad was growing up. But you don't know because you're not living it day to day. We kind of just walk in with this assumption that everyone came from the same place. I know it's not true inherently, right? But knowing my dad who runs an awesome company now, like you wouldn't assume that either, that he grew up in a trailer park, right? How do you think that maybe some of those experiences he had to fight, right? He had to claw, he had to
Mhm.
break those generational curses. Also, the first one his family go to college. Like, how do you think some of those characteristics that you needed to get out of there reminds me like that caterpillar, right? That works
Yep.
its wings to try to get out of the
Mhm.
cocoon. Like, how did that help shape and set you up for success later, do you think? Hey, friends, we're pressing pause on today's episode for a second because if you're a real estate agent feeling buried by pressure, chaos, feeling like you're always on and constantly chasing the next deal, this is for you. So many of us agents are doing everything we're told to do: cold outreach, endless trainings, nonstop hustle, but we still feel stuck wondering, okay, now what's next? We're changing that through this 3-month group cohort designed to help agents build a business fueled exclusively by referrals. No fluff, no vague motivation, just the exact step by step systems, strategies, and support to help you grow sustainably and finally do business differently. This is the exact step by step system, strategies, and support that took Lindsay's business in Wyoming from 15 to 43 sales in just 1 year. So, if you're ready to stop operating from pressure and start building a business that honors God with clarity and confidence, check out the show notes of this episode to book a discovery call with the team and me.
Yeah, well, one of the things that you learn about growing up in the trailer park or in poverty in general is that you do recognize the hard work and grit that is needed to survive.
Mm,
And so at a very early age, you learn how to overcome
mm,
because every day is about survival. Every day is about overcoming the situation that you're in.
mm,
And so when you step out into the big world, you already have what I call those street smart skills. You
mm,
have those survival skills. You know that if you're going to put food on the table, it's going to be up to you.
mm,
You know that if you want something, it's going to be up to you. So
mm,
you learn very early how to not give in to desires because you're giving in to survival.
Hmm.
Now, that could also be a curse too, right? Because if you're always just living in survival mode, then you never know how to step into the abundance
Hmm.
mode either,
Wow.
right? And how to honestly, I say open up your mind and your heart to new belief systems.
Hmm.
This is so out of self-protection, when you're in survival mode, you go into self-protection mode
Hmm.
because you got to protect whatever you have.
Hmm.
And so it's really hard to be able to step out and be open to new things. And so I will say for me to answer your question though of how I was really blessed to be able to have early in my life good influences outside of my family,
Hmm.
outside of that trailer park that actually showed me goodness, that showed me what different belief systems than what I was being raised into, that actually spoke into me and actually gave me borrowed belief. I got to borrow the belief that they had in me, that they could see good in me and that I had potential. And through that borrowed belief was able to step into scary, unknown things, or what we sometimes like to say, I became comfortable with very uncomfortable things
Hmm.
because I knew in order to grow, I knew that in order to change my situation, I had to embrace uncomfortable things and learn new things. So for me, it was a blessing
Hmm.
to be able to be surrounded by people within my high school and then in college, coaches that I was an athlete. And so my coaches who believed in me, they were able to loan that belief to me, Garrett,
Hmm.
that actually said, hey, you can do more.
Hmm.
You were
I love
made
that.
for more.
Hmm. Was so good. I love you said that. I talk to people all the time like, "Hey, I can tell you don't believe in yourself. Borrow mine for now." I needed that when
Mhm.
I got into the industry. Circling back to something you said, and I think I remember how you said it. When you're in survival mode, you go into self-protection mode, right? It's hard to listen and understand what other people are saying. There's a lot of agents that are in that space, right? That are in survival mode in their business that went into maybe that self-protection bubble, if you will.
Mhm.
How are you? You're leading thousands of agents. How are you helping agents find their way out of that space? How did you find your way out of
Yeah.
that space?
Yeah. I think for me it is we've all heard the saying you're the average of the 5 people that you hang out with, right? And I remember the first time I heard that, it was the summer of 2012. And I heard that and I was like, "Whoa." And I took a, quick audit of the people that I was surrounded. I was like, "Well, that's not going to serve me very well."
That's funny.
Right? That's not gonna serve me very well, and so I need to choose the people that I'm going to hang out with, and so it's taking that step and getting into bigger rooms, and so what I'd love to say to anybody who feels like they're in isolation, 1, God did not create us to be in
Mm,
isolation.
mm,
He created us to be in community. That's what
mm,
I love about the community that
mm,
you've built,
mm,
right? He's created us to be in community.
mm,
He's created us to be with other like-minded people,
mm.
right? That's why he says, in relationships, we're not to be unequally yoked
Yeah.
is because we are created to be in design for those relationships. So for me, once I did accept Christ as my savior and surrendered my life to his will, then I had to seek out the people to disciple me into what that will would be
Mm,
because I didn't understand it.
mm.
I made a profession of faith, but that didn't mean I knew how to walk in it.
Yeah.
And so I would say for anyone, wherever you are in your life, whatever you're doing in your life, who's discipling you?
Mm,
Who
mm,
are you surrounding yourself with that can
yeah.
speak the will of God into you?
Mm,
That can be that Holy Spirit's voice and whisper into you. For me, I was grateful before I even understood it. I was accepting it and embracing it.
mm, mm. What does that look like, Dawn? Because I agree with you 1,000%, right? And the 5 people I see most are my kids, and so that's why I'm short because I average their height, and that's just what it came out to. I don't know if that's true. So, but I love that. I agree with you, right? You're average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. How does so someone listening to this is like, yeah, I agree. I look around at the people, I spend time with in my business, and they all think this way, and I'm trying to think this way. How do they step into those bigger rooms? What happens? Like,
Mhm.
what is a tangible way
Yep.
for them to say, "I gotta go forward"?
Yeah. Well, I remember the first time that I heard of John Maxwell, it
Mm,
was through a simulcast.
mm,
And I remember listening and just honestly absorbing everything that John Maxwell was saying at that time because it was talking about leadership. It was a different way of thinking. And so for many of our listeners, they might not have the resource of stepping into a room with John Maxwell in person today, but could actually listen
Mm,
to him, through YouTube, through podcasts, those kind of things. And so I usually say the first step is, what are you filling your mind and your ears with?
mm,
Like, what are you reading? What are you listening to? What is your go-to for when I say your social media, plunge when we sit there and are scrolling? Like, what are you putting in to you? Because that's the first thing that we could do that is easily accessible, right? And then as success comes and as we grow into that success, then there's funds, quite honestly, that are available to maybe go to a conference,
mm,
maybe go and get coaching, quite honestly, right,
mm,
to help you in your business. And then sometimes it's even stepping into those big rooms that John Maxwell might be in,
mm.
or Craig Groeschel
Yeah.
might be in,
Mm,
right? These people that we know that are faith-filled leaders that are teaching us how to do business God's way.
mm,
And so I say, go look for those rooms on your vision board. Look, I don't have anything against cars and yachts and
mhm,
trips and all of those things. And they're kind of like a one and done thing, Garrett.
mm,
They don't necessarily grow you. I would love to see on people's vision boards, what's the next conference that you need to attend? Who's the coach that you need to hire?
mm,
What is the next thing that you need, workshop, seminar that you need to be a part of so that you can stretch yourself? What is the room that you need to get into that you're the dumbest person in the room and you're
mm,
so uncomfortable and you're sitting there and you're like, I can't believe I'm here
mm,
and I don't even know what value I'm going to add to these other people, but I'm here. I made
mm,
it,
mm,
right? Those are the things that stretch us
mm.
and put us into places that can grow and honestly give us the confidence to overcome.
Mm. That's so good. And I think it was a Keller Williams mantra, maybe. I was there for 9.5 years. Be, do, have.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that concept, right? We tend to think, no, if I have what they have, I'll do what they do, and then I'll be like them. That's not true at all. You got to become like them, and then you'll do what they do, and then you'll have what they have, right? And again, as believers, it's not just about what you have, but even in your own spiritual walk. Well, there's plenty of men in my church. I'm like, man, I wish I knew the theology the way that they understood theology, right? Well, like I could, I've got to be like them, and then I'll do the things they do, and then I'll have that
Mhm.
knowledge that they have, right? Or in business, doesn't matter in any scenario. And we tend to just get that out of order, right? I think we sit there and like, man, why am I not like that person? Why am I not like that
Yeah.
person? And I would have what they have. I could do all these things, right? So, and you're such an example of like, no, you didn't have anything that they had. You had to become like them, even borrowing their belief along the way, so you could do what they do and now have what they have, right? It's an
Mhm.
incredible reminder of that's the right order. Now you do talk a lot, and I agree completely about failing forward.
Mm.
I mean, and in real estate, a failure can feel, I think, incredibly personal, right? If a client leaves you or a deal falls apart you thought you had or whatever, or you're expecting that commission check, right? Because that's how you're going to pay your mortgage, and then it falls through. And slow seasons, rejection, all the things, right? How would you recommend agents begin to reframing failing as a healthier and more productive way, as opposed to saying, I'm a failure or I failed here and that's scary? What is failing forward? How do they reframe that as a positive thing?
Well, I think the real estate industry is such a great example that you fail in your first day
Mm.
because we go through real estate school, right? And we come out and we're naive enough to think that what we just learned in real estate school is going to help us be
Mhm.
successful. And all of us experienced real estate agents know that that is so far from the truth.
Yeah.
Like it does not set you up for success on your first day. And so we kind of fail our way forward. And the joke is always that we're trying to avoid real estate jail, right? It's
Mhm.
like if I can just not go to real estate jail. And so here's what I'll say.
Mm,
When you start interviewing people that you want to either be discipled by or mentored by, and even just like the online mentors, right? Like you're
mm,
watching people from afar, those role models. Here's what you're going to discover. They failed a lot
mm,
to get where they are.
mm,
They failed a lot. And when in my role now and in leadership roles, I've had the opportunity to interview a lot of people.
mm,
And when you're interviewing people, what do people normally do when you're interviewing them? Show you their best side,
mm,
give you their resume. I mean, literally, if you think about any resume, does it talk anything about failures?
mm,
No. What does it do? It tells you all the things you did, all the good stuff. But what I know is that you can have a really polished resume and still be failing in life.
Hmm.
because you didn't know how to overcome failing moments. So for me, the fear of failure was crippling because in my mind, every time I would have a failure moment, I like to call them failing moments or a failure time, right? It was in my mind one step closer of going back to the trailer park.
Hmm.
And so I created this dialogue with myself that Dawn, don't fail. Because if you fail, you're going to end up back in the trailer park
Hmm.
and you're not going to be good for anything. And so I had this fear. And when you have fear, you can just think about it in anything in life. What do? You become paralyzed. It's very hard for you to move forward because fear in itself stops us in our tracks. And so I started thinking, like, how can I overcome this? I know I need to overcome. I know this is not serving me. And I would hear other people's success stories of overcoming failure. I was like, okay, but how do you do it? Like that sounds great from the stage, but how do you overcome it? And for me, I had to reframe it. And I had to reframe it that to something that in those moments I can move forward and overcome it. And so what I did is I took the word fail because we all love acronyms
Hmm.
and we love for things. Now, I had heard fear all the time being, you probably have too. Fear is false evidence appearing real.
Hmm.
And I always said that person is lying because if you're in fear mode, it is no false evidence.
Hmm.
You have, I mean, matter of fact, if we took your blood pressure, it's going up,
Hmm.
right?
It's true.
We know that there's things happen physiologically in you when there's fear. So I knew that the word fail was a fear thing for me. So I
Hmm.
had to reframe it, had to give it a new name.
Hmm.
And so what I did is I took the F and I said, can F stand for? Well, it's forgive. Because for me, I was treating any failing moment, it's almost like a sin.
Hmm.
Like, it was something that was condemning me
Hmm.
because I made a mistake or I didn't have enough knowledge or honestly, I just made a bad decision. I made a bad decision,
Hmm.
right? And so this unforgiveness for myself was not allowing me to move forward. It would actually cause me to go into isolation. I would be like those Israelites wandering in the
Mhm.
desert just because I'd rather avoid it,
Yeah.
right? I didn't want to ask for directions, right,
No.
either. And so the first, I had to learn how to forgive myself, just forgive. And if I do that, then I get to go to the A, and the A for me stands accept. I have to just accept it. Now, Jocko Willink wrote a great book, him and Leif Babin, Extreme Ownership. Probably a lot of people listen to it. I mean, I read it. And he talks about having, like, taking the ownership of things.
Mm.
And when I heard Jocko, talk about that, I was like, well, I need to just accept the fact that it happened. Because if you had a failing moment, it happened, but most of us don't want to accept it. What do we want to do? Sweep it under the rug, blame someone else, go into victim mode. I mean, plenty of times I wanted to make the excuses of like just being a trailer park kid,
Mm.
didn't know, right? Didn't have resources or I didn't have the money. Like that's for the rich kids, these poor kids. There were all kinds of excuses. But when I started accepting it because it was my behavior, then I could do the next letter, which I think is the hardest. I in the word fail stands for inspect.
Mm.
And I believe it's the hardest because, well, at least for me, it is because to inspect something, guess what you have to do? Got to relive it.
Mm.
Now, who wants to relive a failing moment? Like, even if I forgive myself and I accept it, great, it happened. Let's move on. And as an entrepreneur, what do? We just move
Yeah.
on. We just want to go faster on things. Well, if we don't inspect it, then we're going to have the same patterns in our life. And that is something that I did see in my family growing up in the trailer park. I would see these failing moments, but then they would do the same thing over and over again. And I would be like, why do they keep doing that? They know that it doesn't give, good results or in our business, good ROI. Why do I keep doing that? Right. And so when you inspect it, you're gonna expose the patterns and the belief systems around it. Well, that gives you an opportunity to learn from it.
Mm.
And when you learn from it, then you can break the patterns. So now I realize that I am getting to be who I am today. I've been laying bricks of failing moments all 50 I'm 51. So all 51 years of my life, right? We are failing forward from the time that we were born. But now I get to look at it and I'm building up the bricks to create success because I'm learning from those situations. I'm
Mm.
learning from those moments and how to reframe it and not get isolated, stuck, or be a wanderer,
Mm.
being able to move
So
forward.
good. Can you walk me through the acronym again one more time?
Yep. So F is forgive. A is accept. I is inspect, L is learn.
So good. I think it was like I just kept thinking about, I think it was Jim Rohn maybe, but said failure is an event, not a person. And so
Mhm.
much of what your acronym is talking about, right, is like failure is not you. You are not a failure. You failed, and there was a moment of failure, and that's okay. And to your point, there are an insane amount of failure moments, right? That's the
Yes.
only way we've ever figured out how to do any. I mean, my youngest is 10 months. And so, and every kid, all four of the big kids, when they went through and figured out how to walk, we've all heard this. Like, what did they do? They got up, they fell over, they got up, they fell over, and kids have this incredible amount of resilience that no matter what happens, they just get up and they try again. Now they might cry about it, right? Which we do too as adults. But they might cry about it, but they get up and they try again. And as long as they don't give up, they eventually figured out. One of my favorite quotes ever was Charles Kettering, who is an author, Don, and he said, "The only time you can't afford to fail is the last time you try." And I love
Mm,
that, right? What a
mhm.
beauty in the sentiment of failing
Yes.
forward. I was like, I'm just gonna keep trying. That's literally it, right? Just keep going and you're gonna be okay. But again, in this industry, it's so common, and you see it again, you see it oversee a lot of agents and this industry. It feels so common that I'm going to jump into this, whatever lead generation opportunity,
Mhm.
program, whatever. I'm going to do it for 3 months. It doesn't work. And so I'm going to jump out. I'm going to do the next one for 3 months. Doesn't work. Next one, 3 months. Right. And so there is perhaps a piece of that where they're like, hey, I'm going to fail forward. And I get it, but this is just not working for me. Right. I've run into agents that my encouragement is like, hey, you just got to keep going. You don't know if you're on. Actually, Linda McKissick at KW, she was on the show, and she says, Gary, you don't know if you're on the 50-yard line or the 5-yard line. You might be about to score a touchdown, but if
Preach.
you give up, you won't know. But a lot
Mhm.
of agents like, yeah, I hear you, but that's not for me. I'm on the 50, so I'm just going to quit, right? And I think that leads to burnout, a lack of sustainability, right? All the things. So what do you think separates the top agents that you're helping coaching, right, and those who are sustained in this industry versus the agent that just burns out eventually and doesn't hit the level of success that they were hoping for? What's the difference?
Yeah. I actually talk about this in my book, Garrett,
Mm,
and it's the ugly word that no one really likes. They actually say they like it, but they don't like it, and it's discipline,
mm,
right? And it's because, and I like to say like the David Goggins of the world, like we have that
uh,
extreme discipline that
uh-huh,
people will look at,
mm,
and then we have people that look at it and they're like, okay, I'll never have that kind of discipline. Well, I
mm,
think we're confused of what the word means because really all discipline means is consistency.
mm,
It's consistency.
mm,
And I'll tell you, it doesn't matter if you're a brand new agent or an experienced agent. When you apply consistency, you'll have success. And when you stop applying consistency, you will then see the results of that, which usually it's no contracts, right?
mm,
And so I tell people it doesn't matter if it's your first day on the job, you're going to lead generate and you're going to have consistency to get the fruits. But it doesn't matter if you've been doing this 18 years. If you stop generating today, you will not
mm,
have fruit.
mm,
Like that's just how it works.
mm,
And so I think most of us, because most people come into real estate as a second career.
mm,
Very few people graduate high school, go take the real estate exam, and become a realtor. They are out there, and I do know some, and actually I know quite a few that are very successful that did that. But for most of us, we ended up in real estate. We
mm.
tried some other things, and especially a lot of real estate agents came in during COVID, right? Because they were on furlough or got laid off,
True, yeah.
and they looked at this as an opportunity. We grew as an industry tremendously during that time, and so what you see is like when people are coming in, they have behaviors from a job before.
Mm,
They have these behaviors of what it looked like to work before, which is not necessarily what's going to serve them well in this career, is because in this career, you have to have consistency every single day.
mm,
And I think that is what separates well, I should even just say a realtor who just has a license to a
mm.
successful agent.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's, a friend of mine and I, we were speaking at this event last week and he just said, "Man, here's the truth." And I'm sure he didn't come up with this right on, but he said, "The truth is success is easy, it's just boring. That's why most people never
Yes.
get
Oh
there,
my
right?
gosh.
Because it's like,
Yes.
I gotta do the same thing over and over and over again." Like, yeah, actually, it was John Maxwell. I saw him speaking, and I don't remember when, but, he gave this great example of how would you go cut down a big, massive oak tree in your backyard? Well, you'd go and you'd swing at it 7 times with an axe, you do it the next day, and then the next day, right? Like, no one's gonna cut it down in one day, but we've been convinced we live in a culture. Amazon is like, "Hey, you actually might get this package
Ugh.
today. You just ordered it."
Today.
You're like, "Sweet, this is the way this is supposed to work." Companies like whatever, any lead system out there that says, "Here, I'm a Pez dispenser. Put money in, I'll give you a business back and you can get it today." You're like, "That's not how this actually works." But we're being sold these things, and so we've become to believe that that is
Mhm.
how it works. And I think that's why failure has become such a bad word. It's like, what do you mean? This is not supposed to fail. This was supposed to work. Why didn't this, all of
Mhm.
this stuff? They promised me I was going to get X amount of leads. They promised me I was going to make X amount of money. And instead of doing the I part, the inspection of like, yeah, but what actually happened? What did I do? What was my input? Right? All the things. We just let it start to define us, or
Mhm.
to your point, we just shove it away and put it under the rug and like never learn anything from it. And I'm guilty of that so many times, right? The number of times I've made the same mistake over and over and over again is pretty embarrassing, to the point I'm not even gonna tell anybody about it, maybe soon, maybe the next book, right, Don? We'll save
Too
that.
soon, too soon, too
Yeah, it's
soon.
too soon.
Yeah.
No, that's right. But it's exactly what you're talking about because you talk about, I believe the terminology you use is intentional guided discipline, right?
Yes.
So what does that mean? Because I agree with you, discipline is the key, but what is intentional guided discipline? What does that mean in your mind?
Yeah. Well, for me, it's a faith-filled discipline,
Mm,
right? First of all, Paul tells us in scripture that we are weak in ourselves. We only have discipline, if I'm using some air quotes on you, strength through Jesus, right? And so for me, I will wake up every day and want to be in the flesh and I
mm,
will want to be lazy.
mm,
I will want to not do the hard things because that's how we're ultimately wired. We're wired for comfort. We're wired for selfishness, right? And so what I have to do is lean into my calling. And so this is it's probably actually my next book that I'm working on
nice.
is actually going to address this rerouting of a seat that we all go through. And it's because most of us, struggle with our discipline because we're outside of our calling.
Mm,
Now, Garrett, I believe we all have the same purpose,
mm,
and that purpose is to glorify Him and
yeah,
to be kingdom builders. That
amen.
I believe that we all have the same purpose, but we all have a different calling to live out the purpose.
Mm,
And the challenge for most people is that they don't understand their calling.
mm,
And so when you don't understand their calling, you're going to go and work out this discipline and consistency on something that was not for you.
mm,
It's actually meant for someone else.
mm,
And so the intentional guided discipline is like, I have to be with my guide. My guide is Jesus. He is my trail guide. Psalm 119, 105 says this. It's a word is a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. Well, I need that guide
mm,
to show me the path. I'm also a trail runner, Garrett.
mm.
I like to run long distances in the woods.
Mm.
And that's because I'm a mom of 5 kids and they never followed me. They're
That's
like,
awesome.
that's if you and the older they got, the further I had to run because those little suckers could run. So I would just run really far. But when I run at night, and if I'm running a race and it's over the night, during night, what do? You put a headlamp lamp on, okay?
Mm,
And you're gonna have your headlamp on, and the headlamp in the dark shines right in front of your feet on the trail. Now I could be running on a trail that I've ran on several times, and I kind of know the trail. But in the middle of the night, I can only see what's in front of me. So I have to trust the light that is shining at my feet to guide me. Because if I think further on down the trail, I could be worried about a bear, I could be worried about a snake. There's going to be roots, there's going to be things that trip me up. But I don't know how far down that is. I don't know what's happening down further on the trail. All I can see is what it's in front of me. That is trusting God's word, is that lamp to our feet. That is intentional guided discipline.
mm,
All I have to do is take the step. God's going to equip me with everything, but He's not going to pick my foot up and move it.
mm,
Dawn has to pick her foot up and move it. I have to be the trailblazer with my trail guide.
mm. That's so good. That's a great analogy. I'm on board with everything other than running. That part,
Running?
not on
Yeah.
board with that, but other everything else is spot on. And yeah, we're gonna end on that because that's so good, Don. I love the imagery of that, and the reality, and it's right. Like the Lord is the one that's gonna guide our steps, but I'm in control of the input. He's the Lord of the output. So we got to get
Right.
off our butts and do something,
That's
and
right. A
not
call to
complain
action.
about it. Yeah. So good, Don. Now you're writing another book. I'm excited for that. Tell people though, how can they go connect with you or get your book now, or where do you want to send them?
Mhm.
We'll make sure it's in the show notes, guys. So don't worry if you miss it. But how can they go connect with you or learn more about you, Don?
Well, first and foremost, on all the socials, so the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the LinkedIn's, I'm on all of those, like
Nice.
most people. So
Yeah.
please come and find me there. DM me. Would love to hear from you. But if you'd like to know more about the book, you can actually go to the book website, and it's trailerparkceobook.com. Just go right onto that website. They'll find out all the places to buy the book at their favorite retailer. Also, it's all the major retailers, but wherever they would like to go. But would love to connect.
That's
Would love.
awesome. And you are launching or have relaunched coaching? Do you want to tell them about
Yes.
that? How can they go?
So
Yeah.
so yeah, actually we're pretty soon my website for that will be released, but if they follow me on the socials, they'll get all that
Great.
information. But I have been coaching since 2012, launched my company actually in 2015, but now picking up clients and growing that because I've actually pivoted a little bit, Garrett. I've always been a business coach, an executive business coach for many, many years, but now my audience is only the faith-filled entrepreneur.
Mm,
That is who
love
I
it.
want. I wanna be able to work with people and show them how to do their business God's way, and so I'm using biblical principles in order to guide the business decisions.
That's
So
awesome.
if that's something they're interested in, would
Yeah.
love to connect.
It's
Would
amazing.
love
So
to connect.
follow Don on
Yep,
socials and you'll see
yep,
all about that. That's awesome. So much alignment there,
yep,
Don. I just appreciate your heart and your story and the things that you share, right? And just the way that you look at the world and the business that we're doing and reframing. I mean, I'm such a believer in that, right? Just taking every thought captive, right? How do we reframe the things that we tell ourselves every day? If you're telling yourself you're a failure, right? You're terrible at this, whatever. Those things aren't from the Lord. He doesn't talk like
mhm,
that, right? And
mhm,
so how do we take those thoughts captive and reframe them to your point and say, here's the reality of what actually is happening. Yeah, you made a failure. You did something that maybe you shouldn't have. You didn't know, whatever. But I also, again, I just keep going back to that the opportunity, the call to inspect what actually happened, right? What is it that I just did, and how do I make sure I don't do that again? I mean, that's just a good and godly discipline for us to say, Lord, I don't want to continue to dishonor you by doing X, Y, and Z. So help me understand how to not do it. And as believers, we should not be afraid to admit publicly, but certainly admit to ourselves that you screwed it up. That's okay, man. That the whole point of the gospel is that you're a sinner. You weren't going to save
sure,
yourself, and so you
right.
needed help. That's like literally the point. And so why are we so afraid to recognize that in our own lives too, right? And I think it's pride that's built within us. So just so many good things, Dawn. And I'm just so thankful for your heart here. So gosh, faithful agents, we could talk forever. We'll have to have Dawn back.
Yes.
And I got to say this last thing, Dawn, you are the first guest ever that tied a point that you made back to a joke, and just mad props. That is real skill right
Yes.
there. So if you guys want to know if she's good at coaching, clearly she is, because no one has done that. It's fantastic.
Well,
Dawn, it was
good.
such a
Uh,
pleasure to have you. Faithful agents, check out all her stuff in the show notes. I love you guys, and I will see you next week. Hey, Christian Agent, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If it resonated, would you take 30 seconds and share it with another agent who's also trying to grow their business without losing their faith, family, or peace? That's how this message spreads. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future episodes. I release new ones each Thursday to help you build success that actually lasts. It genuinely fires me up knowing this podcast is helping you pursue excellence to the glory of God, both at work and at home. I'll meet you back here next week for another episode of The Faithful Agent.